Welcome again to the Business Alchemist podcast. In today's show, we're talking about an issue, a technology that has scared some and enraptured others. We're talking AI. And we're talking about AI in I would say, a very practical way, because with me today, we have Ken West. Ken is a managing partner at Valenta. He specializes in using AI systems in the supply chain. And I've had a little bit of experience in the supply chain, and believe me, the supply chain is not for airy-fairy writers. The supply chain actually moves physical bits and pieces and all sorts of important projects from A to B. So we can't mess around with that stuff. We can't get it wrong. We can't have AI hallucinating, can we? No, we can't. So let me welcome Ken. Welcome to the Business Alchemist podcast.
I appreciate it. I'm super excited to be here and just chat a little bit more about the future and how things are shaping up.
Fantastic. So I think I've already introduced you, Ken. You specialize in AI in the supply chain space.
That is correct.
How about if we start off by just talking a little bit about I kind of mentioned it a little bit there, the divide. There are so many people, especially on LinkedIn, who are very hyped up about AI, and some are so hyped up that they think they're going to lose their jobs. Whereas others, on the other hand, are saying, no, AI is not coming for us. It's here to help and assist us. Where do you stand on that continuum?
So I would give the example back, decades ago at this point, when Microsoft launched their big premium product, Microsoft Excel. And the big buzz around Microsoft Excel was accountants are going to be out of a job. There's going to be nothing left for accountants to do. And now accountants are busier than ever. And I would say AI is not coming for your job. It's looking for tasks to take away from your plate, to take off your plate, make your job easier. And that's really kind of the way to use AI as a tool to grow your business and grow your scalability of your business.
Well, that's really good to hear. So why is it then, Ken? Why is it that there seems to be so much hype about and fear? There's actual fear out there that AI is going to take away all of our jobs. What do you put that down to?
I think it's around a lack. Well, first, understanding, right? Understanding and knowledge and how things work, right? Because that's scary. If you don't understand something and you've seen Terminator and you're big on Skynet, you might think that, oh man, that's how this is going to shape up. But once you understand how AI works, how AI functions, and how it's built, and how these systems are built, it becomes a lot easier to understand and apply. That's really the thing, right? Is taking it and applying it to your current situation. Because the real interesting part about AI is that it's so malleable. You can build it into so many different situations and give it so many different use cases that it really kind of makes people nervous, right? Because it can do so much.
Fascinating. Okay, so you mentioned that it's real and it's malleable. Could you, for the audience, and the audience are people like business owners, founders, who are many of them thinking right now, should we invest in AI? I mean, obviously they're all using the traditional tools that are out there, but when it comes to people who are running real physical systems, how does AI help those folks?
So there's a few different things. So how does AI work? It depends on how you're going to use it, right? There is things like intelligent document processing, where it will read pieces of paper, it'll read documentation, and it can add them into your systems and all things like that. But there's also a big thing right now, the hot topic is agentic AI, where you get essentially a virtual agent, and that's used to orchestrate processes, right? Being in the accounting space and the supply chain space, orchestrating month-end closeout, right? An AI agent that can orchestrate month-end closeout and get that job done. Because the cool thing about agentic AI and things like that, it's goals based. So you give it a goal and it kind of figures out, and it's a little bit more nimble on how to accomplish that goal. If that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like you're telling the story that AI, as long as you understand what the goal is, then AI can be set off to do that in place of humans. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, what I try to show everybody and kind of highlight for everybody, a good use case might be payables, right? The data entry around payables, that can be mind numbing. It can be mundane. It can be the hard part that makes it difficult to come to work every day is, oh man, I've got to type in 10,000 of these invoices, where AI can take that off of somebody's plate, give them back that time to do the proper analytics around it, do the proper trending, do the proper high value tasks that's going to grow the business and set that individual on a really good growth trajectory.
Okay. So could you do a little jump then and talk a little bit about AI from a supply chain perspective? How do you use AI in the supply chain? Because the supply chain is pretty physical, isn't it?
It is. It really is. So with the supply chain, the way we're using AI right now is we can start in the back office or even in the front office. And what we're using it for is to take away some of those, like I said, those mundane tasks, get some automation around those items, but also utilizing it for forward looking objectives, say trend analysis or predictive analytics, and being able to monitor those predictive analytics 24/7 and give real-time feedback on those trends and analytics, and also utilize your company's current trend lines and interconnect them to more global benchmarks in real time. Now, somebody might say, well, I can do that myself. Why would I pay for it? You could do it yourself, but there's time invested. There's a lot of errors that could be created or variances that could need to be explained, things like that. So what AI does is it gives you back that time, and it will present the information to you in such a way that you can make actionable decisions upon it, right? So if we're seeing trends around a certain carrier space, that trend starts going like this, and our trend is going the other way, we might have, with that deviation, we might have an opportunity to capitalize on some market situation, right? Everybody's costs in a certain area are starting to really trend up, but we're seeing ours trend down. How do we capitalize on that? How do we grow the business in that way?
Well, that sounds like quite an important task, because what you're saying is the AI in the supply chain is analyzing the data from I guess a whole range of different inputs and outputs, and making forecast decisions about what to order in, what to slow down on going forward into the future. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but does AI not hallucinate sometimes? Or is this a
AI
different
will,
is this a different type of AI that we're talking about?
yeah. So AI will do again. A lot of it is rules based, so it'll do exactly what you tell it to do, and then AI will learn. Right? AI and machine learning, that's the big hot topic right now. It actually learns what you want. For those who have used ChatGPT, if you have a paid premium account and you continually use that account, it learns how you write. It learns how you speak. And it starts to write in that way. Same kind of phenomenon happens with your inventory ordering. That's what you had mentioned, inventory ordering. It learns, some of the seasonality of the business, just like a person would. It will learn some of that stuff. Now, just like a person, in the beginning, I always, always, always recommend putting in a break point, putting in a stop point to give that AI some guardrails, give it some data governance, make sure your data is right. Because when we come in and we build something in to a business, I don't have software to sell a person. We build a custom solution around your business. We don't have a software that you have to buy. So what we're doing is we're going to get the data right in the bottom, right? Think of a pyramid. The base of that pyramid is going to be data oriented with lots of guardrails around it, lots of policy to make sure that that data is solid, it's clean, and it's really usable. Next, we're going to layer in some process automations. Hey, we're going to automate AP. We're going to automate quoting, right? Getting quotes out to customers instantaneously. Things like that, we're going to automate that. Once we have those processes automated, we can put an AI agent or any other kind of AI, predictive analytics, what have you, into the system that will orchestrate, like I said, kind of conduct and traffic cop and things like that. So as that agent learns, just like an employee, it's going to learn the rhythm, it's going to learn the tendencies, it's going to learn the trends, and it's just going to get better. One interesting thing is if you give it executable tasks, you can add in something like a confidence level. So let's say if you're not 95% confident or more, then it'll kick it out to a human being to look at, right? What would cause that? I don't know. Maybe the document has a smudge across the number and it can't read it. So it's not confident. It sends it over to a person. Maybe, there's something in the vendor. It's not the normal vendor that it sees this from. It sends it to a person, right? So you can set those types of checkpoints and parameters to keep everything really tightened in.
Okay, so does that mean that you're saying that this version of AI or this way of using AI is different to the AI that does hallucinate? Because what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing you saying is, as long as we have clean data and as long as we really understand what the process order is, then we should be able to rely on AI spitting out the information, the trend analysis that we would expect. So
Yep.
how come
Absolutely.
this AI is different to, Sam Altman? I understand he recently, I think, didn't he admit that 48% of AI now does hallucinate?
Yeah. So what Sam Altman's AI is doing is it is making assumptions, and that's where you get the hallucinations, right? It is trying to stay ahead of it's making those assumptions, and it's kind of making its own decisions. So whenever we put AI into a company, we have very specific goals within that organization. We have very specific processes to execute that goal. So what I always recommend, like I said, is putting those guardrails in there. So particularly in the beginning, if it starts to make some assumptions, you can reel it back in, right? Before it just goes out off wandering in a field somewhere. You can reel it back in. And as you make those corrections to those assumptions, it learns I need to stay here, right? This is where this is supposed to stay. And it starts to begin to learn to refine its analysis and refine some of its assumptions, if it's making any, right? The more assumptions you remove and it's based on hard data, you're off to the races, I should say.
Right. And that's what I was about to, that's what is striking me about what you're saying, that what's different about this use case where you've got data clean, especially if it's clean data that you trust.
Yep.
Sounds like you're saying when you've got data that you can trust and you've got the guardrails of this is what I want the AI to do for particular streams of work, then what you're saying, I think, is it's less likely to hallucinate because with the other version of AI, it's continually guessing as to what we're going to do or want to come up with next. Have I got that right?
Yeah, if you think about it, like when you hire a new person into your organization, you hire a brand new person, when you get them there, they have a nice set of desk SOPs, standard operating procedures. They have a clearly defined job description. They know exactly who to talk to if they need questions. They know what vendors to call. Now, imagine if you just dropped them into that seat and said, hey, do this job. They're going to make some guesses, they're going to make some assumptions, and they're going to start to wander away from what exactly we're doing. Same thing with AI, right? AI needs clarity because just like an employee, it needs to know exactly where the boundaries are of what it needs to do, what it needs to make an assumption on, how it needs to do it, things like that. So it's the same as an employee. If you just give them free reign, they're going to make some guesses and they're going to get it wrong sometimes.
So, okay, so for those folks then that maybe don't have the same understanding as to the deep understanding as to what AI can do and how it's different to like a SaaS application, because I know that you're used to working with a variety of ERP programs or SaaS applications. Could you just talk to how is AI different then to, say, running a SAP application in supply chain? Or is it you have to have the ERP in place first, and then you can use the AI to do things that the ERP can't today do?
Absolutely. So I would say, I would always recommend you want your foundation first, right? You want a foundation for that AI to work off of. Otherwise, like we were just talking about, it can hallucinate. It can go left, right, center. And you want that nice solid system to go off on. Now, when we get into a SaaS model, one thing that I've seen is, hey, we're powered by AI. That's like the standard sticker that everybody's slapping on a box right now. Powered by AI. Well, whenever you see that, you really need to start asking some questions like, what does that mean? Because a lot of times you'll see powered by AI and it's either not actually AI, it's just some slick automation, or this powered by AI may solve this problem. It may create 5 more over here, right? So you really want to understand what powered by AI means on that box, because you want a good foundation, and that AI should supplement and add capability or capacity to that. That's really where the value is, and I like to say AI is the tool, not the rule, right? It doesn't dictate what you're going to do and how you run your business. It's a tool to maximize your business.
So what I'm now hearing then, and this is great because I'm learning on the fly. So thanks very much, Ken. This is probably better than having to pay for an AI course. So
and it might be a little biased.
Yeah, yes, but that's fine. That's fine because we need all opinions, don't we? So it sounds like you're saying that if we don't have the rules that are set and the guardrails that are set by the ERP, SaaS, whatever it is, then are you saying it's more difficult to bring in AI?
Yes. If you don't have, if your rules aren't in place or you don't have a clear defined process or something like that, then what I would recommend before somebody starts to experiment with AI and automation is either A, do that first, or B, bring in a partner or an expert that has done that, right? Map out your process. Like a lot of people, it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of people that don't even have their process mapped out on a piece of paper, right? This task leads to this task, and then there's a decision that has to be made, and now there's 2 options, right? All of that should be mapped out very clearly. All of your documentation for your processes. What are your SOPs? Those are the types of things that you want to have really well defined so that you can understand. Now, on process maps, there could be internal controls and standard controls that you want to make sure are still in place, even when AI is navigating it, right? Separation of duties, separation of powers, anything that it may be, certain checks and reconciliations, things like that. So you always want to have those in place too. So that's the kind of foundational piece that I highly recommend others put in place before they experiment with adding AI. Because if AI doesn't have any rules, much like, if you brought a 6-year-old to do tasks, it could be all over the wall, right? So always make sure you've got that foundational piece. And if you either A, don't understand it, don't know how to do it, don't feel comfortable with it, or don't have time to do it, find somebody who is experienced in this and can learn your business and apply that to a process map, standard operating procedures, and a data governance policy.
Okay, so from your experience then, Ken, who would you say can benefit most from the application of AI within, because your specialism is within the supply chain, who can benefit most from from taking AI and running it hand in hand with the ERP type systems that are already in place?
If we're talking ERP systems, it's definitely going to be not just accounting, right? Because accounting are the keepers of the ERP, but it's also going to be those internal stakeholders and those internal customers that accounting serves. Your operations team, your sales team, all of those individuals are going to benefit because you're going to have nice, clean processes. Everything's going to flow. People are going to get their information faster. It's going to be more accurate, and it's going to make the organization better. So I'll give you an example, right? So let's say we have a purchasing example where we fill out POs and it's just not very clearly defined, and we've got a lot of emails that go back and forth, lots of phone calls. Hey, did you get this? Hey, is this project done? Now you've got a system that will bring in the spending. It'll have the budget for the project. It can even give order recommendations. It can gather quotes. It can put everything together. It can bucket it out, and you can get a really clear picture, not just from accounting, but now all of your organization can get a clear picture on that particular project or that particular business unit, whatever it may be, immediately, right? I know that the time delay in getting that stuff done, you could be waiting for a month after the project's done to see where you actually landed. Now that's going to tighten that gap, and you can make actionable decisions company-wide, right? And that's really some of the big benefits there. Now, if we talk about just levels of the organization, people that are in those entry-level roles, typically there's a lot of data entry, right? A ton of it. And that takes away from really growth and development. Hey, I'd love to help you grow, but we got to make sure the work gets done. And this work takes you like 5-6 hours a day. Well, what if we could take that off their plate and use that as a moment to create growth and development in their career? Give them, how do you take the data that AI is giving you and build with it, right? So now we've just elevated them. We've almost upscaled their role from, data clerk to actual analyst. They are now in an analyst role. I pulled some really interesting statistics here. So in the US, about a third of all workers are currently listed as engaged in their work. 51% are listed as not engaged, and 16% are actively disengaged from work. In Europe, this is even more startling. In Europe, only 18% are listed as engaged in their work. 67% are not engaged, and 14% are actively disengaged. I would have to go into the data on this one, but I'm willing to bet that if you could take away things like data entry and some of those manual mundane tasks, that number would shift. You'd get more active engagement. And that's where using AI to change the culture by providing engaging work that they can feel and see their growth development pattern, it's just going to change the game, right? And that's where you use AI as a tool to foster better culture, an exciting role for your team. That's kind of how that works.
Well, that's a big positive message. And my guess is, no, that's a very positive message. And it's really good to hear. And my guess is the stats you're reading from, is that from the latest Gallup poll, the employee engagement survey poll, yeah? Yeah. Those results were quite scary because they actually demonstrate that things have got worse over the last few years than they were doing. And they were already bad a few years back. So, so you're right. So what you're saying is, and I know from my history that one of the biggest issues that people have with regard to engagement is they don't feel that their manager, their company really cares about them and cares about their development. Mm-hmm. And your positive message is that if we can take away all those mundane, horrible, robotic jobs, then that should give the organization the time to spend more time developing and looking after their people.
Yes, absolutely. Growing their team, growing their skills, recognizing that growth, appreciating that, building those connections, and becoming more than just a transactional, get the job done, you line everything up and you go home for the day, right? And it becomes that very stereotypical, you get up, you go to work, you come home, you go to bed, you get up, you go to work, you come home, you go to bed, right? It gets you out of that, right? So now you get to see some of those cool trends, some of that cool stuff, and really start to learn more about how to add value. And that's really how it works.
Right. Well, that's very positive. So I asked the question about who can benefit the most, and that's a very, very good case. So all those people who are doing very mundane data entry jobs, you're saying, hopefully, rather than them losing their jobs, they'll be able to be upskilled to do more with the data once it's actually entered. What do you say to those folks who say,
Absolutely.
"Yeah, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, but hang on a minute, Ken. Are you not painting too rosy a picture? Because if AI is doing the data entry, clearly once the data's in place and you've got the right data management in place and you understand what the data flows are, surely the AI can do the analysis as well. And if it can do the data entry and the analysis, why do we need the people then?
So for me, let's say I would argue, does business ever stay the same? Does the market ever stay the same? No. It's always changing. It's always dynamic. And anybody who's read anything on LinkedIn and you see a good post and I'm going to scroll through the comments and see what everybody thought about this. And you get those ridiculous AI comments and you know exactly what wrote it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You can tell. So AI doesn't do a perfect job in their analysis. Maybe the comment that you're reading kind of fits, but doesn't add a lot of value, right? Bingo. There you go. The person who wrote the comment and they actually take the time to write it all out, there's value in that, right? You're gleaning stuff off of all those comments of like, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's exactly why. So AI can do it. AI can do all that stuff, but same thing with, it can comment, but nobody cares. It doesn't give anything insightful, right? It just presents everything. It'll read the sentiment of what roughly you're talking about, and it'll give an answer, but there's not a lot of value to it. So I would say it can do all the menial baseline stuff. It can do the analysis, but only you know what specifically that means for your business, right? Any industry, even supply chain, we have like benchmarks and things, but they're not necessarily, the most advantageous for every business, right? Some people in the LTL space, there's people out there that say, oh, this is the best thing ever. I love doing LTL. This is the biggest part of our business. And there's others that are like, I'll do it, but I don't really care to do it. It's kind of a pain for us. We are better with heavy haul. Okay. Well, if AI sees the LTL data in a mass sector, maybe it's going to make some ideal scenarios that don't apply to your business. It's still doing it. It's still, but it doesn't matter, right? And that's where a human being can go, we don't really do LTL. Maybe there's an opportunity, but let's just focus our attention over here instead, right? And making those corrections. And then let's say 5 years later, the market has shifted. Now they can shift back to LTL, but AI would have thought, well, you guys don't really do it anymore. And for anybody listening, LTL is less than truckload.
Yes, I was just going to ask. Yeah. Thank goodness you said that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how, you can see that market shift and how a person really needs to be there to apply not just best practices, but what makes sense for their business, right? That's really where we need people to do that.
Right. Okay. I get you. So that's an answer to the question, who are the people in the organization that can benefit? So you've explained that the people who are doing the kind of the more mundane data entry folks, they can benefit because they can now start to be upskilled, and they can also, in having that opportunity, they're doing less mundane work. So hopefully we're using their God-given intelligence and analysis skills or interpretation skills in order to probably, I guess, in the end, feel more human. Um, what
Yeah.
other people do you come across who benefit from these kinds of systems in the supply chain?
So let's go from some of the clerical and analyst roles. Let's go up a level. Let's go to maybe the supervisors, right? Those supervisors are going to benefit because one of the big things that a supervisor's job is to make sure all of the stuff that the lower level people have done correctly. So there's a lot of checking, a lot of reconciling, a lot of double checking, triple checking. AI automation can do that. And now it pulls you out of that role, gives you, I don't know how many hours back a week to be able to go through. I'm going to make this situation up and say, hey, X operations person, these three areas were really overspent according to budget. Why? Now we can start asking that why question and start digging into root cause and things like that. And again, that is where AI is just going to produce the data, but it's not going to actually say what's going on. Maybe we planned for an expense to happen next month and it hit this month, so that threw the budget off. So there's no big deal, right? There's no fire. AI might look at that and say, we way overspent, and it might give you something that, a person could just kind of reel back in, right? So it's not a perfect system. It gives you the tools to be a perfect system and work together with AI to really, like I said, maximize your business.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying, so the next level up, they can benefit also from having to do less of the kind of mundane tasks that they are normally doing.
Yep.
And and when we go up another level, same benefits or
Yeah,
different?
absolutely. So we go up another level. We'll go up to more of the senior leader role, maybe even in your executive role. Having experience as a CFO, some of the things that I'm always looking at is looking at, financial partners, right? Partners, and trying to figure out who's the best fit for the goals that we're looking for. So, hey, we want to lease this piece of equipment. Who are we going to work for that lease financing? Okay, how do I have no idea, right? We have a portfolio of people. So now I can look at each one of those, but AI can provide me the data I need to make a actionable decision based on data rather than a gut feeling, an opinion, or a thought. So now I have real data to back up my decision in real time and be able to keep the business moving forward and capitalize on some of those opportunities. Maybe we need financing for this big opportunity that, maybe there's an acquisition that we want to make, but we've really got to hone in on a finance partner. With this, I can make quickly, I can capitalize on that opportunity, and then I can use AI to analyze how good that opportunity really is, right? But I can use my knowledge, my skills, and my brain power, essentially, to use all the stuff that it's going to provide me and make an actionable decision.
Mm. I'm starting to see a picture of, with the ERP systems and the data rules and the process rules in place, what AI is providing is the opportunity to be much more flexible in real time with what's actually happening. And is that actually, are companies actually finding that they're getting those benefits, and as a result, once they've made the investment, are they getting the ROI returns that they were expecting when they first signed the check and got over the initial enthusiasm and excitement and hype about, oh yeah, AI is gonna, it's definitely going to improve everything? Is your experience
Yeah.
that most people who go down this path, most business owners, actually do benefit on the bottom line?
I would say yes and no, which is the worst answer ever. Everybody hates to hear the word "it depends," but it does. So it really depends. It depends on two things. It depends on what the goals were that they started off with, and it depends on what they used to accomplish those goals. So let's just say that your goal was to utilize AI to maybe optimize your inventory, right? That was the goal. So you went out and you found a software partner that is going to give you this new software and it's going to optimize everything. Okay. I'm already skeptical.
Yeah, yes.
So it on the side of the box, it says powered by AI, but really it's just it's just interconnected a lot of the stuff within its software really well, but it's not actually powered by AI. So now it's just all these rules-based things. You drop in all of your ordering and all of your inventory data, you drop it in there, and you see a little bit of a bump. Maybe we're optimized a little bit. But really those types of softwares are written for a kind of a peanut butter smear across as many businesses and industries as possible. The people that are really seeing the most ROI and really capturing the benefits of AI and automation and true data analytics are those that are finding a custom solution for them at a decent or relatively affordable cost, right? Everybody can do it. It's going to cost a bunch of money. So that's really how I take and add value to an organization, is because, like I said, we don't have a software to sell. So we solve the exact problem and link it into your business, right? That's where you're going to get the most value out of AI and out of automation, because you know your business best, right? And if somebody can work to build something for your business, that's where you're going to find the most AI and ROI.
And who do you see as the folks that end up not getting what they hoped for and are disappointed? What generally is happening there with those people?
Two things. One, they don't do a lot of due diligence into what they're actually trying to do. So what we do is we'll create a list, and we call it business requirements. And we will have a specific list of what are our goals at the end of this. And until we hit those goals, we're not done. So that is the big one, right? Because you could spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on an implementation and another hundreds of thousands of dollars on licensing and all this other stuff. And once they get their system in there and they say, all right, the rest is up to you. If you have a problem, put in an IT ticket and we'll get back to you in 3 to 5 business days. That's where the frustration comes, because now your business is invested in that technology and you may not have all this direct support that you need. So when you look at a provider and when you look at any kind of AI, make sure you have a clear understanding of what you want to accomplish and who you are accomplishing it with, right? Because if you don't have that level of expertise in your organization, some do, which is great. But if you don't, understand that and reach out and get help that you need to implement this kind of thing, right? That's really the big thing, is having the knowledge, having the understanding, and having a clear path to what you are looking for out of AI.
So that's interesting, because
I've had a client.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I've actually had a client come up to me and say, I want to automate as much of this as I can. I think they wanted me to automate accounting because he was stuck doing it. And he's like, I'm not an accountant. It takes me like the entire last week of the month to get all my figures in here. This doesn't add value to my business. I want to get rid of as much of this as possible. Great. Let's do that.
Okay. As I was listening to you, I was thinking back a couple of decades ago where in the world that I was operating in, I was getting involved in a lot of change management around ERP systems. And one of the things that struck me as you were talking there was, it sounds very similar to the kind of change management issues that businesses had over the generations. So are you saying that it's the similar story with AI, that if you're not clear about what you're trying to achieve at the beginning, and my guess as well is if you don't get the right people involved in that decision up front, then there's a very good chance that you're going to spend a lot of money, and you're going to be able to put the powered by AI badge on your new systems, but but it may not deliver anything like what you expected. And in fact, it might actually detract if you don't get the change management right.
Right, absolutely. Not just the change management from a people side, right? Everybody feels change management comes from the people side of things, where we have to get everybody bought in, we have to get everybody on board using the technology. That is a part of it. But change management is also about changing your system, changing your process to maximize the ROI, right? So if you normally do it this way, but now it's going to be done this way, we got to make sure that that shift is well defined, well executed, and is exactly what you need to, like I said, accomplish that goal that you're striving to get.
And because that's spanning quite a lot of stuff, isn't it? That's spanning, as you say, the people side. Now, from my experience, whenever we say, "Oh yeah," it's not just the people, but from my experience, it's the people side of things that often goes awry. So, from your experience, what aspect of the change management would you say is the most challenging?
Oh, absolutely the people side. Absolutely the
Really?
people side, because there's a lot of ideas, thoughts, even fears around any kind of change, right? Change is scary. Change is scary, especially when you've done something the same way for 10, 20, 30 years. It's scary to change, right? It's been working for me. Why would I change it now? But the environment the external environment has kind of created this need for change. So, understanding that people are going to be scared, right? Having that empathy moment that people are going to be scared, and giving them the space to understand, state their thoughts, state their opinions, and understand their perspective, right? A lot of companies that don't take that moment, they will just kind of say, this is what we're doing, we're really excited about it, get on the bus or get out of the way. That can create a big rift, and it could create a lot of problems. So that my kind of suggestion or recommendation as we move through some of these change management moments is understand the people side. What are they fearing? What are they concerned about? What are they excited for, right? And give them the why. Give them why we're doing this, and manage those expectations of, hey, we're going to start this big change. And between these kind of two milestones, it's probably going to get a little rough, right? Don't paint a picture of it's going to be all roses. It probably is going to be a little rough, right? But if we all do it together, we all work together, and we all are bought into the system, it's probably going to come out with some really awesome results.
Okay, that makes a heck of a lot of sense. Do you have any kind of analysis or any like high level stats as to the state of the AI marketplace? Yeah, even if it's just in supply chain. Can you talk to that at all? Because there'll be some people watching this who'll be thinking, okay, this sounds reasonable. Ken sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He's not going to pull the wool over our eyes. Right. So, just how nascent is AI in supply chain now, would you say, Ken?
So, in the Geodis Supply Chain Worldwide Survey, they discovered that 94% of the companies that were surveyed do not have full visibility into their supply chain. They don't have the visibility into it. By embracing supply chain digitalization and leveraging the benefits these companies can achieve, 20% lower operating costs and 11% greater EBITDA. And this is based on trends in 2023, right? So as we get to 24, 25, 26, these are only going to grow and get a little bit more enticing to adopt. Not only that, there was a Gartner survey that went out that 61% of their respondents say technology is a source of competitive advantage. And companies that are unifying those platforms and portfolios across their legacy system are going to stay competitive. And I don't know if anybody's heard about tariffs or anything like that, but being competitive in those tariff moments, like,
Yeah.
it gives you that flexibility to adapt. It gives you any kind of disruption in the supply chain. It gives you the ability to adapt to it, right? So there's just a few of
Yeah, yeah,
our
yeah.
statistics, but there's a ton, right? There's a ton more. So
Mm,
that would be what I would say is
mm.
using AI can give you flexibility to disruption. It can increase your bottom line, right? It can increase the bottom line, and it can grow your team, your talent, and your overall culture exponentially.
And when you're out in the marketplace, Ken, would you say that the people who you bump into, um, have most of them already started deploying AI, or or is it the other way around? Are the majority still thinking about it and haven't really started yet?
There's a lot of interest, but it's where do we start, right? There is a ton of people who have said, "Oh man, we've been looking at AI for months or years at this point. We've been looking at AI forever, and we're not sure where to start." And if you're looking for where to start, my phrase, and if this offends, I apologize, but my phrase to ask somebody who says, "I don't know where to start," is, "What about your job sucks the most?"
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
start there. And that usually gets you not only the biggest ROI, but it usually makes you feel a lot better too when you don't have that big looming task that you don't want to do anymore. It could be payables, it could be, checking this against that, it could be anything, right? But what about your job sucks the most? Let's start there.
Mm. And I know, based on the previous conversations you and I have had and our interaction on LinkedIn, I know that's a big driver for you, isn't it? That you really, as a father, I know that you want to spend more and more quality time with your kids. And there must be lots of people out there listening to this and business owners who would like to be able to spend more of their time doing the work that they find enjoyable and rewarding. So I think is that one of your big drivers, that you want to help the application of positive culture at work?
Absolutely. So I'll give you one of my favorite success stories, more as a leader, more so than an entrepreneur. But so I had a team that used to work for me that was just riddled with work, right? These people were, when I first took over the team, they were working 60 hours a week. They were buried in work. It was taking forever to get results, get things done, because it was very manual and very much a fire drill all the time. After several months of just exploring and trying to figure out root cause and things like that, we kind of narrowed it down to a couple of things. And as we began to remove some of those obstacles, this was during the summer when I had a one-on-one with one of my employees, and my employee had said to me one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. Because of the changes that we have made, I was able to attend my daughter's softball game for the first time. And in that game, she hit a grand slam with a bat that was like the birthday present or whatever. And I never would have been able to do that had we not made these changes. And some of those changes were around AI and automation.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, so
So that
mm,
moment was able to be seen.
mm, mm. That explains quite a lot, and I can understand now why you're as driven by this new opportunity
Yeah.
as you are. As you are, yeah. This might be quite a good opportunity then to maybe just switch and just explain to our audience how you got into this area, because I know that you're not really a technologist by training. You're actually an accountant. You're a CFO, yeah. If I've got that right.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
how did an accountant end up helping organizations with AI in the supply chain?
So the very first time that I started in on this adventure, if you will, I was an intern at a very large corporation. And it was like maybe my second week or so in my internship. one of the managers of the department came in and they had a massive stack of papers, like about that big. And they had said, here you go. This should take you about 4 months to do. You're going to go through each one of these invoices and each one of these, and you're going to insert a line into this spreadsheet if there's a new vendor, and you're going to add all the totals, and you're going to drag all the formulas down, and then you're going to go to the next one. And any vendors that aren't here anymore, you're going to get rid of them, and you're going to delete the line, and you're going to update the formula. And that should take you a couple of months to get done. And they walked out of the room, and the very first thing, I think I even said this out loud, and the intern that was sharing an office with me started laughing, is, I am not doing this. There's got to be a better way to do this. So I started to think, and the company used SAP. So for anybody that uses SAP, you can probably nod your head, but it's really just a bunch of data tables all linked together. That's really how SAP and most ERP systems work. And I thought, well, what if I could just link them together in this sheet that they've presented me with? So long story short, I linked it together. So whenever there's a new vendor that's added to the system or a vendor that's not been paid and doesn't have any spend for the year, it'll be removed, it'll add them, and it will dynamically give them this budget page that they were asking me to update in real time, all the time. I linked it to everything with a lot of data tables and SQL tables and things. And how did I learn that? I Googled it. That's how I figured it out. How do I do this? I watched Google and YouTube. And I got it done in about 2 weeks. And I went to my manager and I said, okay, that project's done. And they were stunned. But after they looked through it, they were like, this is exactly what we needed, but it's automated. And what I got out of it was I actually got to go do some really cool experiences that a lot of interns never would have gotten because I had already finished that project. It was already done. I didn't have to have the time to go through and continue to insert rows, delete rows, pull columns down, and things like that. So that was the moment where I thought, okay, everybody should be doing this. I mean, that was more than 10 years ago now, well over 10 years ago. And the technology has changed so much that it's even offered the ability for people to go even deeper, right? So now it's not just entering data like we were talking about before. We can make decisions. We can do trend analyses and things like that. So that's kind of how I got started, is thinking, I'm not doing that. There's got to be a better way.
And so when next? Because that sounds like you were engaged in the automation of manual tasks.
Yep.
Yeah. And you wouldn't describe that as AI though, would you?
No, I wouldn't. So I did this for several companies that I worked for. And then I got to a company where I was like, man, I'm building all these automations, but it's not really saving a lot of time for anybody that's got to type all this stuff in, right? Somebody's still got to type it into SAP. What I'm doing is just like automating it and kind of bringing it all together, but I got to figure that out. So I was at a company that we needed to automate something that was a lot of typing stuff from a PDF into the ERP system. And I did some Googling, I did some researching, and I did some education. And I learned how to create this stuff on some other platforms that would take those PDFs, translate them into actual, extract all that data. It could convert it into an email with a nice summary, and then have some action buttons on the bottom of the email for the approver. And it would send an email, you could hit approve, it would send that email back to the AI agent, and that AI agent would start putting data into your ERP system. And then for a while, we had a break there where somebody would check the agent and make sure everything was right. But after, 2 months of checking stuff that's always right, we kind of went, all right, I'm done with this. It's always right, move on. And then it would actually schedule all your payments and things like that. This was for invoicing, or for payables, sorry. So it would read all these invoices and it would schedule the payables. And we would always have those rules of, with these vendors, you never miss a payment, you never miss a day, right? Like, the electric company doesn't really care what your business situation is. They want their money and they want it now. Kind of like J.G. Wentworth. And And, we could set those up to always hit our discount dates. We could build in flexibility, right? So after the base system was created, we started building in flexibility of, hey, let's get a tiered system of all of our vendors, of who is a critical vendor. Like if they're mad, they could shut down the business. Who's next? Who's that? And then who doesn't have a whole lot of bargaining power where we can go all the way to the last day? Things like that, right? So it really became an aha moment of, I know how to automate. Now I know how to use AI. How can I tie these together and not just help the business I'm working for, but help everybody? And that's really where I kind of grew out of that and said, I think doing this for as many people as possible and letting everybody see their kids' softball games or dance recitals or whatever it is, that's where I found my internal purpose, if you will.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like you're
Yeah.
saying that you got there from following and clearly learning using a classroom of Google and YouTube,
Yep.
how to how to actually apply these new systems. So that sounds like you're also suggesting that today it must be even easier because there must be all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of AI courses out there. So would you say, is that part of your message, that it's never been easier to use technologies like this as long as you're willing to learn and adapt and think differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be, like I said, I've started this over a decade ago. I started my learning process and really honing my skills, but it doesn't have to be that, oh, everybody has to go out there and do it on their own. There's so much out there now where, there's individuals that'll help you do this, that'll build it for you. My personal company, we do it as a managed service on a month-to-month basis. So if we don't provide the value, then fire us. That's fine. And that's really what it is you have to provide that value. And as you learn, at least learn enough to understand the capability, right? There's so much out there to where you can just understand the ability that AI has, but also just Google some use cases, right? Because the hard part is AI is only really limited to your imagination. If you can dream it up, we could probably figure it out. There's some stuff out there that we'll never be able to figure out, but um, a lot of the business use cases, if you can think through it and you have a good process around it, we could probably figure out a way to drop AI and automation in there to relieve that from your team, relieve that stress from your team, relieve that pain point. So that's really where I would highly encourage people to go out there and just learn about AI and learn, what can it do? Because it's hard to think outside the bun, if you will. It's hard to think that way when you don't even know what AI is capable of doing, right? You don't know what you don't know. So definitely go explore, learn a little bit, seek out a good partner for your business that not only can utilize the technology and implement it in your business, but can be that trusted business partner. They're not just a vendor, they're a business partner. Find that person who is going to learn about your business, learn about your specific use case, and put it in a way that is going to be useful for your business and not just be a peanut butter smear across the industry.
Well, that's a great time then. That's a fantastic segue. I couldn't really have planned that any better. So thank you, Ken. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess at Valenta, you must have a system, a way of operating when you come into organizations. Could you just talk high level about what that looks like?
Yeah. So there's a process where we'll just say we're going to do some sort of automation or AI. We'll come in and we'll do a discovery call. And on that discovery call, I want to know what you're doing, why you're doing it. I want to know about your business. How big's your business? Where is your big focus? Things like that. I want to learn about your business, and then we'll talk about the specific use case that you want. The big one right now that I'm working on, really, it seems this month, has been payables, right? Payables and timeliness of payables and invoicing. So getting either invoices out to customers or getting payments out to vendors. Okay, why do we want this? Let's just stick with invoicing. We want to get invoices out to customers because we want to grow our business in such a way that allows better cash flow, right? The faster you get an invoice to somebody, the faster they're going to be likely to pay. So we've also got, accuracy of invoicing. We want to make sure our invoices are accurate. We don't want to be resending invoices all the time. And then also we've got a lot of manual stuff around our invoicing. So we really need a way to kind of refine that, because one of the big questions I like to ask in those discovery calls, what if marketing were to actually hit their goal for a change? What if your marketing team did send 20% more work to your team? What would happen? Oh man, it'd be a nightmare. It'd be a fire drill. We'd have to hire 5 more people. Well, how about we don't do that and we build your capacity in that way? So that's the first thing. We're going to do a discovery call and get real specific. The second part, we're going to grab a subject matter expert from your business in that specific task that we're going to work on. We're going to have them actually do the task for our developers, and we're going to record it. We're going to make sure that we have everything well documented, exactly how you do it, why you do it. We're going to go through process mapping potentially, and we're going to get those specific business requirements and exactly how you get it done. From there, we're going to start development. This is where our developers are going to begin to build these automations. We're also going to have a project manager that is going to meet every day for about 15 minutes a day during that development phase to make sure that there's no questions, there's no concerns, there's no roadblocks, nothing is in the way, and everything is moving forward. Now, asterisk, if there's nothing to report, we will skip the meeting, but we do have it on your calendar every day for that time. But yeah, so then we go in through that development phase, and then here's a part that people either overlook or underutilize. Then we go into user testing. Now, we will do a lot of user testing on our end. We'll ask for a bunch of examples and things like that, and really put it through its paces. But we're also going to give you the opportunity. And what I ask all of my clients to do is, please break this thing now before we go live. Try every weird, nuanced thing you can think of to break it right now. After we get done user testing, then we're going to go live. And when we go live, we like to try to keep that 15-minute meeting at least, to make sure that there's no questions, there's no concerns, there's no comments, because we operate in a managed service model where it's a month to month, so that you don't have this massive capital investment that if it doesn't work, that sucks. That didn't work. We're very invested month to month. We stay on top of things, and you have full access to me, you have full access to my team, and we're right there for you, because we know that if something doesn't quite work right, that can be a big deal for every business. So that's the high level of what our process is. Go through, discover, learn, go through the development phase, work with the client to get exactly what they want, go through user testing, and then we go live, and then it's that extended response time and extended technical support after that.
So this sounds like a well-trodden path that you've obviously used time and time again.
Yes.
Are there any organizations that you come across when you go down your normal path that is problematic? I.e., they had in their minds, yeah, we'd love to automate and use AI for this process, but when you get there and you do the investigation, you find that it's actually not appropriate for some reason.
Yeah, sometimes there's, we talked a little bit about data. Sometimes their data isn't ready, right? Maybe they've changed systems a few times, and there's data in there that it's nonsense data. It doesn't fit. It's old. It's outdated. It doesn't have any relevance anymore. Maybe there's a lot of stuff. Let's just say there's a lot of spreadsheets that it pulls from, and those spreadsheets are linked to files that are saved off on somebody's computer. And if somebody were to move those files to a different location, now it doesn't work. So there are times where we recommend taking a step back and fixing the root of some of these problems, fixing that baseline data before we add things like automation and AI, because I want to make sure that your business is set up for success. What I don't want is to go, yeah, absolutely, we can do that, move forward, plow forward, and then it just turns the business upside down, right? And that's, I think, what getting a good partner should be doing, right? Because just trying to move forward and get the contract signed or whatever the case may be, it's just gonna make it worse in the short term and the long term for this company, because now they're going to lose a lot of trust in the power of AI, the power of automation. They're going to lose a lot of that trust. And that's where I think a lot of companies are right now, is they're really concerned because they've had a bad experience and they're like, I don't want to mess with that. You got to do your due diligence. You got to do the work leading up to things. And sometimes it's not the right time for AI or automation. We want to fix the other things first.
That makes a heck of a lot of sense. And I guess that's where the managed service thing comes in as well, doesn't it? Because if you know that on a month by month basis you can be sacked for for the system not operating in the way that the client wants, then that's going to keep you very engaged in ensuring that the initial work up front, the discovery work, is actually accurate and it's going to deliver what the client wants. So that makes a heck of a lot of sense. So what kind of reasons do you come across as to why business owners decide not to apply AI in an automation sense, whether that's supply chain or not? So what I'm asking are, what are the key objections that business owners have for engaging you guys and getting you to work? Because, like all vendors, the opportunity sounds ideal. Why wouldn't you deploy AI? Why wouldn't you deploy SAP or, whichever application? So what are the times when it just doesn't really work for owners?
Yeah, so the big one, there's a couple of them, right? So one of the ones that usually when I say this might not be a fit for you, right, is, we go through this ROI, and I like to keep all the nonsense out of ROIs. Like, oh yeah, there's this assumed risk rating per transaction times this thing from this study. Like that's BS. Get rid of that crap. Let's go with hard numbers that we can actually track. So when we get to, hey, we use the payables. We'll use payables again because we've talked about that already, or invoicing. Either side of the equation, we start talking and, okay, this actually doesn't seem to fit from an ROI standpoint, right? It's more of a nice to have, right? This would be great to have, but you're not going to get the real value out of it. Now, if we can do a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there, that might work. But if we're just specifically focused on this one pain point is all I want this for, and it's only going to give me this return, it might not be a fit, right? So we want to look at ROI heavily. And right, like I said, you can do a lot of assumptions, but those are nonsense, right? Those assumptions do no good, and I would call that a red flag. If any of you follow me on LinkedIn, that I do a whole post on it. So really build out a strong ROI to make sure you're actually going to get what you expect. Another one that I get a lot is we're really custom, we're really niche. Like that's for a bigger company that, has a very, very defined lane. And I like to go with McDonald's. Let's think about a Big Mac. Can you go to any McDonald's in the world and order a Big Mac without lettuce? Yeah. Can you order it without pickles? Yeah. Can you get extra cheese? Yeah. So that's kind of what I say is, you're not too custom, too niche, too whatever. You just have a really big list of ingredients. It's going to take some work to get all those ingredients lined out and really understood. But once we do, we're done, right? So that's really my discussion around that is, if you feel like you're too big, too custom, too niche, let's just be methodical about our approach. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
No, that makes
so. Those are two of the big. Those are two of the big ones.
Okay. So what about? So those are almost the environmental reasons as to why owners wouldn't go ahead, i.e., the case just doesn't stand up, or there's too many fluffy assumptions in there.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about there must be, I guess, a bunch of psychological and emotional reasons as to why some owners don't go ahead. Do you come up against those much?
Yeah, we get a lot of, oh yeah, we've heard this whole spiel before. We're not interested, and it's because of that partner that was kind of giving that presentation, or even if they had a negative experience, right? They already went through this, it didn't go well. You know, that partner didn't do their job in protecting that company, protecting what they're working, who they're working for, and I think that's typically what gets that fear. Or they've heard so much about AI, they've heard so much about all this stuff, and they've heard the positives and the negatives, and they've scrolled through all the social medias and they've watched the videos, and they just get confused about what is this actually going to do for my business. Man, I've heard, wait, we talked about Sam Altman saying AI hallucinates, right? And
Yeah,
then we
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of explained how we can reel that back in. They hear one message and that kind of sets their opinion, and we got to work to say, well, yes, and, or yes, but, things like that. And that's another psychological reason. Another is just this perception of time. God, that's going to take a year to get involved, and I don't have that kind of time to dedicate to this. Well, that's kind of why we do the done for you model, right? We keep you as involved as you want to be, but we do it for you so that you can utilize that time to go work on your business and not in your business. So the perception of time is another one of, God, that's going to take years to build, and really we get it done pretty quick for you, but we keep you as involved as you want to be. So some people really want to be involved in the process, really intimately involved. Others are like, just get it done, I don't have time for this. And we can do both.
Hmm. And are you able to do this like virtually, or do you have to be on site? So what you're saying is you can do your discovery, understand the client's business map, process map, and from that you can start to diagnose where potentially you could help. Just another quick question, as I was asking that one, do you ever get called in to do the analysis work up front as to where AI could, from your perspective, from your knowledge, deliver the value, as opposed to the client predicting or hoping that the AI can make the difference?
Absolutely. I personally do an AI readiness workshop where we go through all of it, defining AI, talking about your business, talking about your business goals, things like that. And we actually go through that process with either one individual, maybe it's the founder, or maybe it's the entire senior leadership team, maybe it's the whole company. And we'll go through, we can do it virtually, we can do it on site, but it's a very interactive, highly participatory. So I'm giving everybody a clue. If you want to do this, it's highly participatory way to not just talk about just AI and kind of throw out the buzzwords and move on, but how does it fit into your business, and how do you want it to fit into your business? Because like I said, it's very flexible, it's very malleable, and it's only limited by your imagination.
That sounds interesting. So, would that be one of your pieces of advice for those people who are on the fence now? Could that be maybe a more practical way to tip their toes in the water, i.e., get involved in a readiness workshop where it's not just theoretical and conceptual? You're actually engaged with someone who understands the nuts and bolts of how it works, because you actually do that on a on a daily basis. Um, would that be your advice to those people who are thinking, I wonder, I've been reading stuff, but I'm not really quite sure. Would that be where you would point people to start?
Yes. If you're kind of unsure of how AI, how automation fits into your business, what the capabilities are, maybe not even sure what direction you want to go, or maybe you have so much that you want to add, we got to come up with, I like to call it a battle plan. That's a little aggressive, but I like to call it a battle plan or a blueprint of how are we going to do this. So that's really what those AI readiness workshops are for, is to help kind of sift through all the different messaging around AI and all the different capabilities and find some of those high ROIs, right? And maybe it's a staged process that we go through and develop for you, right? So, hey, we've got some quick wins here. I hate that term, I'm sorry, but we've got some quick wins here that we can actually capture some value in the short term. Then we got some more that are more long-term focused, and then we have a few that are even longer out than that that are going to become foundational pieces to the success of the operation.
And from you, again, from your experience, what's the perfect makeup for people? I guess it depends on the size of the organization, etc. Who would you say are the best people to be on that readiness workshop, so that real lessons, so that real questions are able to be asked of you, and you're able to deliver real value to the organization?
Yeah. So I would say larger organizations, you want your decision makers there, right? People that are going to actually decide things, because those are the individuals that not only need to feel comfortable, but also understand where we're headed, right? Because understanding what it can do, what it's going to do, and all that stuff is really where you're able to make a decision, because we're going to bring data. We're going to figure things out. Now, I would also recommend having, maybe you've got your senior leadership and then going down a level or so to be able to answer and ask some of the questions that are in the detail, right? Because that's really where the success is some of that detail of how does this actually get done? Is this actually a good candidate for automation or AI? You really want to have that. Now, if those senior leaders know the answers to those, great, right? Some of the smaller organizations might have senior leadership that are so in tune with it that they can answer those questions. But some might be massive organizations that they have never done some of the stuff specifically with this company. So maybe they don't know exactly what button clicks they have to go through. Maybe they don't know exactly how this process goes, and that's okay. But I would at least have a few subject matter experts there to really get into some of the detail, because we get pretty detailed in some of these AI workshops.
Okay, so as we come to the end of the show then, Ken, where can people find out about the readiness workshops and also contact you? Because I guess there'll be some people out there who just want to have a conversation with you and say, hey, okay, you sound credible. You sound like you know what you're talking about. But can I ask you some more pertinent questions about how it might work for me or not work for me? How do people get hold of you, Ken?
Yeah. So to get a hold of me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's really the best, fastest way to get a hold of me. If you don't know my LinkedIn, you can find me on Bill's page.
Yeah, definitely.
But that is definitely the fastest way to get a hold of me, because my phone goes with me everywhere. I know, except during a few core hours where I'm dad and only dad. So, but you can get a hold of me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at ken.west@valenta.io. You can email me anytime. Also, I have, you can check out valenta.io. We've got a lot of content on there. Again, I've got a lot of content on my page as well around some of this stuff. And anybody listening, anybody watching, we'll probably send you a free ebook. We'll have a free ebook for you, and I'll send them to Phil as well, so you guys can reach out to Phil for some ebook.
Fantastic. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. So, Ken, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we should? Because clearly, this is an area where there's a lot of emotions around, both positive and negative. Is there anything that we haven't covered that I haven't asked you that you think, with the benefit of hindsight, it would be good if you were able to give a little bit of overview?
Yeah, so I would say not necessarily new topics, but just restating that the importance of understanding AI and understanding what it can do. You don't need to learn how to code, but learn what AI can actually do for your business, and then find the right partner and the right tool for your use case and for your business, right? What you don't want to get stuck in is some 24-month contract with something that solves this problem but creates 5 more. I would definitely say that, and the partners that we do have a lot of partners and engaged, active individuals that are always out there looking for the best and latest tools. So we like to say technology agnostic, so that we can make true recommendations for what actually was going to make a difference for the organization, rather than, well, I make money off of this one, so I'm going to recommend that one. Doesn't matter. We like to make the right recommendation for the right organization. So definitely find a partner that is willing to do the same. And then just keep your mind open, right? Stay open-minded and explore and stay curious. That curiosity is what's really going to pay dividends for you in the end. If you're always approaching everything from a curious mindset rather than a closed mindset, you're definitely going to get a lot better results, and you're going to get a lot better understanding, and you're going to get a lot more comfort around the technology that's available out there, and be able to really grow your business. I like to define scalability as growing your capacity without sacrificing quality or service and reducing costs to deliver your product or service. That's how you get scalable, and that's what this technology is able to do.
Well, that's a fantastically positive place to end. And I especially love, to be honest, Ken, the fact that you're coming at this with these two big principles of believing that humans shouldn't be doing the low level entry work, and instead we should be using the human imagination and intellect to do higher level jobs, and therefore enable people who have got families to spend more quality time with their folks, because at the end of the day, what's life actually about? And I also like your message of AI can be a real force for good when we think about change, like, changing cultures. And especially as you've mentioned, the Gallup employee survey that's come out, that the numbers are looking worse at the moment. So if we can deploy AI to improve that scenario, that's got to be all good. So unless you have anything else to say, Ken, this has been a fantastic show. You've given us lots of fantastic insight. I think you've managed, certainly for me anyway, you've quelled a lot of the doubts, a lot of the concerns that I know that a lot of people have. So that's really useful, Ken. Thank you so much, and I look forward to following your journey as you take AI, into the future and improve lots more supply chains.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to do it, and I'm so excited to be able to give some really good time back to a lot of these people in our organization.
That's fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that our folks get access to your details, and we'll talk to you again real soon, Ken. Thank you very much for being on the Business Alchemist podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It was awesome.
Brilliant. Excellent. Cheers now.